Picture this. It's a hot August afternoon in 1966 at the US 30 drag strip in Indiana. The air smells like race fuel and burnt rubber. Engines idle in the staging lanes, each one louder than the last. Among the serious superstock cars sits a quiet 1966 Dodge Coronet. Faded paint, stock wheels. Nothing about it looks special. Under the car is a 34-year-old transmission mechanic named Tommy Kowalski. Not a factory engineer, not a sponsored driver, just a man who rebuilt gearboxes for a living and raced on weekends. On paper, his car doesn't belong here. Under the hood is a 383 cubic inch big block making roughly 375 horsepower, respectable for the street. But parked beside him are 426 Hemi cars, pushing over 425 horsepower. In drag racing, that difference usually decides the race before it even starts. And yet, by the end of that afternoon, the quiet Coronet is crossing the finish line ahead of cars with far more power. Not by luck, not once, but consistently. What Tommy Kowalski understood was something the performance world had overlooked for years. It wasn't about making more power, it was about wasting less of it. In the mid-1960s, the muscle car war was at full throttle. Ford had the 427, Chevrolet had the 396, Chrysler had the legendary 426 Hemi. The formula seemed simple. More displacement meant more horsepower, and more horsepower meant quicker quarter-mile times. Engine dyno numbers were everything. Magazines printed them, racers bragged about them, manufacturers built entire marketing campaigns around them. But dynos measure power at the crankshaft. They don't measure what actually reaches the pavement. Tommy spent his weekdays rebuilding transmissions. He saw firsthand how small misalignments could destroy internal components. A few degrees off inside a gearbox could cause wear, heat, and inefficiency. So he started wondering if 2 degrees mattered inside a transmission. What was happening in the rest of the driveline? Between the engine and the rear wheels sits a chain of components: transmission, driveshaft, universal joints, differential, axles. Each one rotating, each one resisting motion, each one capable of stealing power. Most racers installed parts and hoped for the best. Tommy measured. Using a borrowed magnetic angle finder, he checked the relationship between his engine, transmission, and differential. What he found surprised him. The engine sat at one angle. The transmission added another. The rear axle pointed slightly upward. Altogether, the driveline was operating through multiple degrees of misalignment. That may not sound dramatic, but at 4,000 driveshaft RPM, those angles matter. Universal joints don't transmit power smoothly at steep angles. They speed up and slow down twice per revolution. That fluctuation creates vibration and friction. Friction creates heat. Heat steals horsepower. It was invisible loss. Tommy decided to fix it. He fabricated adjustable mounts for the engine and transmission. He modified the rear spring perches so he could rotate the differential. Then he aligned everything with precision, not on jack stands, but at ride height, with himself in the driver's seat and a full tank of fuel. He wasn't chasing horsepower, he was chasing efficiency. When he finished, the difference was immediate. The car felt smoother pushing it across the garage floor. At the track, the improvement showed on the time slip, from 14.80 seconds to 14.42, nearly 4/10 quicker, without touching the engine. People assumed he was hiding something: nitrous, illegal cams, exotic fuel. But there was nothing unusual under the hood. The power hadn't increased. The losses had decreased. Encouraged, Tommy looked deeper. Rotating weight became his next target. In a drag race, it's not just about how much a component weighs, it's about how fast it spins. A pound inside a driveshaft spinning thousands of times per minute consumes far more energy than a pound sitting in the trunk. He had the driveshaft wall thickness reduced. He replaced heavy steel components with aluminum where possible. He swapped in a lighter differential center section. In total, he removed around 18 pounds of rotating mass. On paper, that doesn't sound revolutionary, but rotating weight multiplies its effect. Removing it is like taking far more static weight out of the car. Back at the strip, the Coronet improved again, 14.20 seconds. Still not a Hemi killer, but now close enough to make people uncomfortable. Then came the final refinement: gear precision. Rear gear ratios were advertised as exact numbers, 4.10 to 1, 3.91 to 1. But manufacturing tolerances meant slight variations. Tommy began measuring them carefully, selecting sets that were closest to perfect specification, installing them with meticulous attention to backlash and pattern. The gain was small, maybe a hundredth or two. But racing improvements add up. By the end of the season, the 383-powered Coronet was running consistent 14.0 passes at nearly 100 miles per hour. A car that should have been outclassed was now winning rounds. Eventually, competitors demanded inspections. Officials checked everything: camshaft, compression, displacement, fuel. Nothing illegal. When a tech inspector crawled underneath the car, he noticed something unusual. The driveline looked straight, clean angles, no aggressive U-joint deflection, no visible strain. "What did you do under here?" he asked. Tommy's answer was simple: "I made it straight." Word spread quickly. Racers in the Midwest began copying his method. Adjustable mounts became common. Lightweight driveline parts entered the aftermarket. Angle finders appeared in toolboxes. Within a few years, the conversation in drag racing changed. It wasn't just about horsepower anymore. It was about how efficiently you could deliver it. The 1966 Coronet continued racing for years. The engine remained mostly untouched. The thin-walled driveshaft held together. The alignment stayed true. The car eventually retired, but the idea didn't. Modern drag cars now produce unimaginable power: 1,500 horsepower and beyond. Carbon fiber drive shafts, precision machined gears, computer-controlled differentials. Yet the foundation remains the same: minimize misalignment, reduce rotating mass, optimize efficiency. Today, engineers use advanced simulation software to analyze what Tommy measured with a simple magnetic tool. The scale has changed. The principle hasn't. There's something quietly powerful about that. Not a story of brute force, not a story of unlimited budgets, but of attention, of noticing unusual wear patterns, of asking why a car felt resistant, of refusing to accept that horsepower alone was the answer. Sometimes progress doesn't come from building something bigger. Sometimes it comes from looking at what you already have and making it work better. In racing, like in life, power is important, but how you use it matters more. And in a small garage in Illinois in 1966, a transmission mechanic proved exactly that.